Good evening, everybody. I'm David Asman. Lou Dobbs has the night off. Our top stories: President Trump standing tall for the American people, threatening to close the southern border and terminate any trade deals unless his border wall is funded. The president calling out the obstinate and obstructionist Dems for their refusal to meet him on a deal. Incoming acting White House Chief of Staff Mick Mulvaney says the radical Dem leaders Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer are not even talking to the president.
I wish all options were open. Again, we need folks to talk with us. We need folks to at least discuss with us. I cannot. It still strikes me as very unusual that the Democrats did not provide a counter offer to our last discussion. They simply left town. Again, the president is here. The president canceled his plans. Where's Chuck Schumer? Where Nancy Pelosi? They're not even talking right now, and we don't think they will until after the new Congress is sworn in.
Apparently, Nancy Pelosi is in Hawaii, by the way. Tonight, we take up the president's steadfast efforts to secure the southern border and the do-nothing Congress's ineffectiveness with Daily Caller editor Christopher Bedford. Also tonight, the manhunt for an illegal immigrant who killed Newman, California police officer Ronil Singh has ended. Authorities found suspect Gustavo Perez Arriaga as he was planning to make his way back to Mexico. In a heartbreaking show of gratitude, Officer Singh's brother thanked law enforcement officials for their efforts in finding the cop killer.
I'd like to thank you from the bottom of my heart to make this happen. I wish I could thank all the law enforcement agencies, Homeland Security in San Francisco, everyone, Bakersfield team. I was waiting for this to happen.
Just another example of why securing our borders is imperative. We take this up with former FBI intelligence officer Steve Rogers and our panel, Niger Innes and Rachel Campos Duffy. And the red storm continues to rise. China continues its move toward global dominance by taking advantage of debt-ridden nations, this time in Africa. The communist Chinese regime poised to seize control over a major port in Kenya. Fox News foreign policy analyst Waleed Phares joining us tonight to discuss China's increasing aggression and what the U.S. needs to do to combat it. Our top story tonight, President Trump threatening to close the southern border completely if he doesn't get funding for a wall and canceling his holiday weekend trip to Mar-a-Lago in order to focus on a deal for stronger border security. But it looks like the do-nothing Congress will leave him waiting. Lame duck House Speaker Paul Ryan has abandoned the president and his agenda. He isn't expected to be seen at the Capitol anymore under this Congress, while tone-deaf House Minority Leader Nancy Pelosi is currently enjoying her vacation in Hawaii. For more, we turn to correspondent Ellison Barber at the White House.
David, President Trump says without money for a border wall, he just might shut down the southern border entirely.
The United States loses so much money on trade with Mexico under NAFTA, the president tweeted, that I would consider closing the southern border, a profit-making operation. We build a wall or close the southern border.
Shutting down the southern border would cost up to $1 billion a day. Is the president seriously willing to do that?
Yeah, he absolutely is.
It's unclear if the president could legally close the entire southern border. And if he did, there would surely be legal challenges, just like we saw after the so-called travel bans. The president's budget director and soon-to-be acting chief of staff, Mick Mulvaney, says it is not an empty threat.
All options are on the table. Listen, it's the only way we can get the Democrats' attention.
According to the White House, they offered Democrats a deal that is less than President Trump's previous ask of $5 billion for border security and a wall. But they say Democrats just walked away.
That steel barrier that the president tweeted out, that's what he wants to build. The Democrats, believe it or not, don't call that a wall. They offered us $1.3 billion to do that. We countered with $5 billion. They did not even counter us.
More than anyone, administration officials blame House Minority Leader Nancy Pelosi.
Chuck Schumer and the Senate Democrats probably would cut a deal, but they're protecting Mrs. Pelosi.
She's unwilling to actually do anything until she gets her speakership. She's more willing to protect that than she is to protect our borders and protect American lives.
President Trump, who once said this,
if we don't get what we want, I will shut down the government.
Okay.
Putting some blame on the Ninth Circuit, tweeting the reason the DACA for wall deal didn't get done was that a ridiculous court Court decision from the Ninth Circuit allowed deferred action for childhood arrivals to remain, thereby setting up a Supreme Court case. After ruling, Dems dropped deal, and that's where we are today. Democrat obstruction of the needed wall. Yesterday, a spokesperson for Pelosi said Democrats offered Republicans 3 options to reopen the government, and that all 3 included funding for border security, but not the president's wall, which they describe as immoral, ineffective, and expensive.
The White House says they are very much expecting and believe that they could be in this fight for the long haul. David?
Ellison Barber at the White House, thank you. We now turn to Syria, where President Trump's decision to withdraw U.S. troops continues to gain support from some unlikely people. Fox's Lucas Tomlinson has the story.
Syrian forces moved to the outskirts of a Kurdish-held city captured from ISIS, putting hundreds of American troops in potential danger. Syrian President Bashar al-Assad's forces closed in 10 days after President Trump ordered the full withdrawal of U.S. forces from the country. But the Kurds say they welcome the Syrian troops in Manbij as protection against a potential Turkish invasion after their U.S. allies leave. Turkey's president says he wants the Kurdish fighters out of the city immediately.
Our entire aim is to make terror organizations leave the area. If terror organizations leave, then there is no work left for us anyway. Our communications and relationships with both the United States, with President Trump, whom I spoke to recently, and Russia, continues healthily.
President Trump made the decision to pull out of Syria following a call with his Turkish counterpart earlier this month. The former U.S. ambassador to Syria under the Obama administration supports President Trump's decision to pull out. Holding northeastern Syria would not have enabled Washington to leverage any important concessions from Damascus, Tehran, or Moscow. Only Syrians, not U.S. troops and stabilization teams, can reverse that. We would do well to be humbler about our abilities, especially in the face of sustained, widespread regional hostility. 7 years after the start of Syria's civil war, President Assad no longer feels isolated. Gulf states long opposed to his rule are coming back to Damascus. Bahrain announced Friday it will reopen its embassy in Syria, one day after the United Arab Emirates did the same. U.S. officials tell me there's no immediate plans to withdraw any of the American troops from Manbij, Syria. The complete withdrawal from the country could take months. David?
Lucas Tomlinson, thank you very much. Well, after 2 days on the run, the illegal immigrant suspected of killing a California police officer is in custody tonight. Police confirming just hours ago the arrest of 33-year-old Gustavo Perez Arriaga. He is an illegal immigrant, confirmed gang member, and 2-time convicted drunk driver with outstanding warrants. California sheriff also confirming the arrest of his brother and co-worker for covering up his whereabouts. But under aerial surveillance, a Kern County tactical team intercepted Arriaga near Bakersfield, where he surrendered without firing a shot. Arriaga is the Mexican national who entered the U.S. illegally in Arizona. He was wanted for killing 33-year-old Ron Singh, a 7-year police veteran who emigrated to the U.S. legally from Fiji. Singh was married with a 5-month-old son. He and his canine drug dog, Sam, stopped a possible drunk driver. Just moments later, Singh radios, "Shots fired. I'm hit." He later died. Today, his brother, Reggie, thanked police for finding his alleged killer.
Ronald Singh was my older brother. Yes, he's not coming back. A lot of law enforcement people that I don't know, they work days and nights to make this happen. I'd like to thank you from the bottom of my heart to make this happen. I wish I could thank all the law enforcement agencies, Homeland Security in San Francisco, everyone.
Our sympathies go to that brother and, of course, the family. That photograph that we showed of him with the Christmas tree, his wife and his son, that was taken just moments before he left to the location where he was shot. Just imagine, just a few moments after this photo was taken, that police officer was dead. Today at a news conference, the sheriff of Stanislaus County threw gasoline on the already red-hot immigration debate by calling Singh's death preventable, blaming the state's sanctuary law for prohibiting police from communicating with ICE about known and wanted felons. Take a listen.
This could have been preventable. And under SB 54 in California, based on 2 arrests for DUI and some other active warrants that this criminal has out there, law enforcement would have been prohibited from sharing any information with ICE about this criminal gang member. Ladies and gentlemen, this is not how you protect a community.
I asked the county to declare Kern a non-sanctuary county for exactly that reason. When you tie our hands and don't allow us to work with our federal partners and communicate with our federal partners about people that commit crimes and who are in this country illegally, we're going to have incidents like this.
Tonight, there is blood on the hands of those responsible for preventing those local police from contacting federal agents. Police say they have started building their case against Arriaga, with an arraignment likely coming next Wednesday. Coming up next, the radical Dems have no deal in place for stronger border security, but have plenty of criticism for President Trump.
We should be talking about border security in the context of pathways to citizenship for Dreamers and DACA. We need to address the humanitarian crisis that this administration created at the border.
We ought to work at it until we get to an agreement where a majority say yes. And I think we had that until the president, went off his meds, and who the hell knows what happened.
So if you close the border, you're going to reinvite huge swings on the stock market. You're going to jeopardize the economic progress we've made, and you're frankly going to do a lot of damage to your own prospects for 2020.
Extraordinary. Plus, thousands of migrants in Honduras are expected to make their way north in the new year, but a new deal struck by the Trump administration could stop them before they make it to the U.S. We're going to take all that up after the break with former FBI intel officer Steve Rogers. Stay with us. A recent deal between the Trump administration and Mexico will stop a new migrant caravan from reaching the U.S. About 15,000 people are expected to leave Honduras on January 15th. They're going to make their way up Central America before stopping in southern Mexico, where Mexican President Lopez Obrador has pledged visas and work for them. That's coupled with a $4.8 billion American investment in the same area of Mexico. And meanwhile, the mayor of Tijuana, Mexico, revealing just how much money the caravan is costing his city. Mayor Juan Manuel Gastelum says the city spends $28,000 per day on the caravan. The city officials saying there are still over 6,000 migrants hanging out in Tijuana. Joining me now is Steve Rogers, a Trump 2020 Advisory Board member, former Navy Lieutenant Commander, and former FBI Joint Terrorism Task Force member. And your son is a police officer, we should mention.
Yes.
I don't know if you saw the tape of those police officers in California, the sheriffs from Stanislaus County, putting the blame specifically at the doorstep of those who force their hands to avoid contacting federal agents who could arrest these illegals before they cause trouble.
Yes, those politicians making decisions for people that go in harm's way. Let me share something with you. The police officers in this country do a good job. They want to protect us. They're called to protect the innocent, law-abiding citizen, not illegal criminals. And this is exactly what's happening. And I've got to tell you, I saw that mayor from Oakland, California. She should be charged with malfeasance, misfeasance, or obstruction of justice. It's tragic what these Democrat socialists are doing to this country.
Now, in addition to everything else, this particular one of the reasons they were able to ID him was he had a tattoo that was part of a gang tattoo that helped lead them to track him down. But when the president mentioned that a lot of the illegals who come across are gang members, the Democrats poo-pooed him. They said, no. I mean, he's making a big deal out of this. There are not the number of gang members. Here's an example of a gang member who killed a police officer. What more proof do you need?
The president of the United States was way ahead of the ball on this for a long time. He said he would make America safe again. He looked at that border as I did when I was on a Joint Terrorism Task Force. What is coming across that border is what is happening right now, as we see with gangs. Worse than that, God forbid that some terrorist cell thinks about crossing that border, and they bring something in here that'll be more tragic than just the death of one person.
The president has already said that there are people in his administration, in our intel units, who have spotted terrorists coming across the border. Again, the Democrats say that this is all hype. They're teasing him, making fun of it, and so forth. What are we going to have to do before they will wake up to what's really going on?
President Trump talks about national security. That's why he's making these decisions. The Democrats are not talking about national security. They're using this wall situation as yet another means to try to bring him down. Well, it's not going to work because the American people are standing behind their president.
By the way, there's a bad record that was made in 2018, and that is we now have 144 just so far. There are a couple of days left before the end of the year. 144 police officers killed in the line of duty. That's a 12% increase from 2017. Do you think there's any relation between border security and that?
I believe there is, because you have a lot of these gang members and career criminals crossing the border. But even more so than that, look at some of these illegal immigrants who were arrested before and released. That's the result of catch and release. So the way to solve the problem is get tough like the president wants to get tough, put the wall up, and put politicians in jail who are obstructing justice.
The new caravan that is coming from Honduras, as I mentioned before, there does seem to be a deal that was struck between President Trump and the new president of Mexico. We give them money. They keep the caravan members in southern Mexico doing some development projects, whatever it is. I know that area of Mexico. It's a very underdeveloped area, so that if the money is applied well, it could all work out. However, I also know Mexican officials, yes, and it is very difficult to ensure the kind of honesty and probity that you would need in order to make this work. What are your thoughts about it?
Well, I remember the president saying he's not the president of the world. He's president of the United States, and his job is to protect the American people. He'll give them the money. Hopefully they'll use it the way they should. But his goal is to protect the American people.
So even if it's not totally on the up and up, it's worth it in order to keep that caravan down in Mexico rather than coming here.
I'm sure the people in Texas and Arizona and the border states would agree with you.
Yeah. Now, what do you think about this fight over the border wall itself? Is there any? Have you ever seen any indication from Democrats that there's any solution that they have that they've put forward concerning, obviously not a wall, which they once agreed was a good idea, they don't anymore, but anything involving border security?
Well, yeah, years ago they were in support of it. You could roll the tapes from way back where Schumer, Pelosi, all of them were saying, we need stronger border security. What happened? Donald Trump got elected president. It's not about national security for them. It's about taking down this president. The president of the United States is looking to protect the American people. It's not a political decision on his part. It's a national security decision.
But don't you think it's so transparent? I look at it, and not only do we have their statements from a few years ago, suggesting they were in favor of a border. But now, when you see absolutely no proposal whatsoever made by them in order to increase border security, except for some vague ideas about drones, I mean, that's about the only thing that they put forward. Don't you think American voters will see through that?
Oh, you wait until 2020. I can't wait until that day comes, because there are Democrats who are conservatives who are in favor of what the president's doing. Remember what they did when he ran for office? Donald Trump will never win. Who's sitting in the White House? We're going to go through that same scenario in 2020, and he's going to win and win big.
He mentioned in a tweet this week that 2020, one of the biggest election issues he's going to have is border security. Border security, law and order, particularly in light of what happened to that poor police officer in California. Don't you think it is going to be one of the key issues of his campaign, of his reelection campaign?
Major issue, because the killing of that police officer and seeing his wife and child, that could be me, that could be you, that could be anyone in that photograph. That hit the heart of not just Republicans, but Democrats, independents. It hit the heart of good, solid American people who are saying this has got to come to an end. But interesting enough, the only person who really wants to put an end to this, sincerely, is President Trump.
Steve Rogers, good to see you, my friend. Thank you very much.
Happy
New Year. Be sure to vote in tonight's poll. Do you believe President Trump is standing tall for all Americans by threatening to close the U.S.-Mexico border if rhinos and radical Dems won't fund the wall? Cast your vote on Twitter @LouDobbs. And follow Lou at Twitter @LouDobbs. Like him on Facebook and follow him on Instagram @LouDobbsTonight. Coming up next, the U.S. military looks to combat growing threats in the Arctic Circle from China and Russia. We'll have more on that and more with foreign policy expert Waleed Phares after a quick message. Welcome back. I'm David Asman. Lou Dobbs has the night off. China's global takeover continues. The communist nation poised to soon take over Kenya's largest port in Mombasa. China will reportedly take over the port after Kenya failed to pay back loans to China. Now, China has denied the report and denies ever using the port as collateral in a deal with Kenya. Meanwhile, the U.S. Navy planning freedom of navigation missions in the Arctic, a move countering communist Chinese influence in the region. This coming almost a year after China announced its intention to include the Arctic in the One Belt, One Road infrastructure project, making the ridiculous claim that it is a near Arctic state. Joining me now is Fox Business national security and foreign policy analyst, Dr. Waleed Phares. Let's first talk about what's happening in Kenya. I'm interested in this story because I used to cover Latin America. I've seen it happen a lot in little countries in Latin America, like Nicaragua, for example, where China came into Nicaragua, had these big plans that they were going to build a new canal to rival the Panama Canal. Went in there, made deals with all these corrupt officials, including the president, paid out the cash in bribes, then took all kinds of precious resources from the Nicaraguan country, brought it home, and then left without any canal being built. They have a tendency to do it. They're kind of like locusts and moving into countries, taking what they need and then moving on.
You know, David, the big picture is very important to understand what's actually happening in Kenya and in the other countries that you have mentioned. While the United States is busy, super busy, with 4 active wars in the Middle East, with Iran, with North Korea, of course, containing Russia and, of course, our southern borders. A lot of stuff is happening. China is moving to the southern belt of the globe. That would be all of Latin America, Africa, we'll talk about Kenya, and South Asia. In addition to that, with Russia, they're interested now in the Arctic. So the tools that they have basically is, first of all, a lot of cash, a lot of money, and actual physical money that they can spend on countries that needs that money to pay off their debts. But second, also, technology. They can offer a very cheap technology to these countries. And thirdly, it is a superpower which has a veto power in the Security Council. So China is using all of this to be able to move in those areas.
You know, they offer the technology. That's a particularly interesting facet of all this. But the technology that they're offering is stuff that's made by Huawei and made by ZTE. And we know that a lot of those technologies have stuff built into them, these backdoor channels that allow them to spy on what's going on in those countries. That's the reason our intel agencies have convinced the government not to use any of these products. So they're also gaining intel, which they could use for various purposes.
They are using also our negotiations with them over global economies, over our debt, over many things. And therefore, they are using any intelligence they can, business and economic and technological intelligence that they can gather.
Wherever there is a corrupt official, there is money from the Chinese or the Russians to bribe that official for them to get what they want. Now, what do we do in response to this?
Well, first of all, we have to recalibrate, reorganize our policies towards 2 large chunks of the planet, which are Latin America, and I'm very glad that soon we're going to have a new president in Brazil who is going to change the course of Brazil, and that is going to impact Argentina, it's going to impact Venezuela, so on and so forth. So that is one thing we can do. Second, of course, in Africa, we need to have an Africa policy. We do have one, but we need to have a more focus on countries like Kenya and others who have some needs that we can meet and therefore contain the expansion of China.
Waleed, let me move to the Middle East, an area that where your expertise is founded. How do we pull out of these countries in the Middle East that we got embroiled in? A lot of conflicts for some good reasons initially, and in one case, in terms of Syria, we went in there to straighten out a mess that was left from the previous administration. But now it's time to. How do we move out without deserting allies that really have given every bit of energy and life that they have in order to fight our fight?
You know, we're discussing this in 2018. I'm pretty sure that it's going to be the major question in 2019, next year. The only answer I can think of at a strategic level is this. We need to make sure that those who are going to replace us are with us. As simple as that. If we withdraw from Iraq, we did it in 2011. Who was behind us in Iraq? Who did the control? The Iranians. We need to stop that. Now, in Syria, if the president, the administration wants to withdraw from eastern Syria, we need to make sure either to have other foreign forces involved, and I don't think it's happening soon, or empower this alliance of Kurds, Arab, Sunni, and Christians to be trained and be able to defend themselves. That's the minimum we need to do.
I have heard, we're getting word today that in a strange twist of fate, the Kurds, again, who worked so valiantly in clearing out some of these ISIS nests that existed all over Syria, that they are welcoming the Syrian army in because they see them as a buffer against the Turks coming in who would just wipe them out. Have you heard anything about that?
Yes, let me translate this into reality. The Kurds really wanted to be with us, have worked very hard with the United States and our allies. Now we are leaving. What is the choice? Either those militias coming from the north, from the Turkish-Syrian border, and they are Muslim Brotherhood militias, and they want to dislodge them from their areas, or talk with Syria, with the Assad regime. I mean, I know from my sources they don't like the Assad regime, they don't like the Iranian regime, but they have no other choice.
Yeah, if it's a choice between them or the Turks, they'll take the folks who are closer by. Finally, Afghanistan, real quickly, what do we do there?
Look, there is a big question about the withdrawal. Yes, we can withdraw, but again, the same principle apply. Who are we leaving behind us? The government is okay. It needs some organization, but the tribes, a federation of tribes, including in the south, should be our target as NGOs to work with, to support, and then they will be the ones to resist the Taliban.
It's a tough world out there. Waleed Phares, thank you very much for being here. Appreciate it.
Thank you, David.
Coming up next, the radical left is staffing up ahead of their planned investigations and nonstop harassment of President Trump. We're going to have that and more after the break with the Daily Caller's Christopher Bedford. Stay with us. We're coming right back.